Okay, we are recording.
Cool. We are recording and we are broadcasting live from Mount Shasta. It's Monday night. Toltec discussions with some dude named Golden Eagle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really looking forward to this. We're going to sit here and we're going to learn Toltec stuff from a Toltec shaman guy. Where is he? Oh, shoot. That's me. That means I got to figure out something to say. Something to say that's Toltecish. Let me think. Tonal. That's Toltecish, right? Isn't that the name of our language? Toltecish? Or Toltecese? Oh man.
Toltec a lot of
This is a dead audience tonight. Dead audience. So, how we all doing?
Good. Verbing.
Yeah.
Extreme excruciating pain.
Did Mercury retrograde just start or something?
Yeah, I think I saw something from Violet that said that.
So, okay. Last week I challenged you all to change the way you think, right? And to, at any moment, remember, like, to be aware of what am I thinking and why am I thinking that? I know it was 7 whole days ago. But did anybody remember that during the week?
Yes.
Yes, I have a yes. Ding. You?
Yeah, I remembered.
Did you do it?
I was doing other stuff. This week.
This week you're going to remember to ask yourself, what am I thinking and why?
So I do that, and I didn't necessarily think of it as the exercise that you gave, but I have examples of my experiences that I can say I applied those principles to.
Good. Well, yeah, you've been doing this training a little longer than some in the room, so including
Just a
moi, to be perfectly honest about it all.
Well, depends on what you're talking about.
Well, that's true too. I mean, specifically the Toltec work.
Ah.
You came to that. I'm not sure who came to the esoteric work first in this lifetime. It's hard to say.
Or which path when.
Which path? I didn't do the which path yet.
Which is which? That was my favorite game when I was a kid. It was a game called Which is Which.
Okay. So, we talked, if you may recall, about, okay, we have the dreamer, the stalker, and the warrior, our 3 core natures. And we talked about, okay, we want to be aware of what we're thinking and be proactive. That's the next phase, right? Be proactive about thinking. Here's my intent. I'm going to place my attention on my intent and place my attention on what I'm thinking and why, and all as well as how. Right? That's all good stuff. Then we talked over here. Can we switch cameras just for a moment?
He's getting fancy now.
About, well, I was going to make a permanent sign this week and it didn't happen, so we get the temporary whiteboard version. So down here in Malkuth, those of you who've studied the Tree of Life know what this is. Those of you who may be new and don't know this yet, I have a series of, it's a playlist called In Quest of Self. I recommend it to learn about the Tree of Life. So we've talked about these 3 paths here leading from our physical world of Malkuth up the tree or down the tree. So this patch of discernment, this path of your total integrated world, and this path of your intuition, this connects to the causal plane, this connects to the mental plane, and so mental energy on this side, intuitive energy over here, and integrated energy up the middle channel, right? So we talked mainly last week about these 3 paths and these 3 spheres. We didn't talk a whole lot about Yesod, just enough to acknowledge its existence. And we're going to, and only really with respect to how this stuff comes down from above into Malkuth. So today I'm going to talk ever so slightly about the path of Resh, which is also the path of the sun in Tarot, and the path of Zadi, which is the path of the stars in Tarot, or star singular, if those of you who are still on the last Aeonic interpretation of that card, and a little bit about the path of Pei, which is the Tower card, which is one of my favorites, because you can't make progress unless you go through the Tower card and get rid of everything old that doesn't serve, right? So the Tower card, unlike some people's opinion, is very often a good card if you're doing tarot work.
But it doesn't always feel good.
It always feels good when it's over.
Yes. Yes.
I'll let retrograde.
All struggles do.
So, are we back over here?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, so that path, now from now on, you're probably just going to have to remember that little sign over there. We may go back. We'll see. The sphere of Hod in the mental plane. The information that goes down to Malkuth over the path of judgment, aka the path of Shin, in the Hebrew word, which means tooth. I call it the path of discernment because all the old symbolism of judgment is the last judgment and you're in big trouble and how dare you be a sinner and try to think you're not, and very negative interpretations. Whereas just by analyzing the two spheres every path on the tree connects to, you start to get an idea of the nature of the path. So mentally you're assessing your world, the physical world, and that's your feedback process. Did the world do what I wanted it to do when I tweaked it, right? So that's the kind of mental energies that come into us and our physical world and our physical consciousness that for us to use to try and master our world, our tonal. The other side of the tree, the path of Koph, which it means the back of the head, you may recall from last week or earlier, and that's our reptile brain, our animal brain, our automatic intuitive brain. And so the path of the moon is all about intuition. It's the entrance to the feminine pillar. It's all of those things that we feel and especially that we know, and we've got no proof or evidence that would satisfy the Vulcans, right, on Star Trek. They're Mr. and Miss Logical and only logic, and I'm like, dudes, you're missing half the tree. I have these mental conversations with Spock, or T'Pau, the old ancient female monk S. What do you call a monk S?
Abbas.
Abbas, yeah. Anyway, she's like in this place, and she passes judgment on, are you logical enough? And so you're missing this whole other half of the universe over here. You're avoiding it out of fear. When you look at the history of the Vulcan race, they avoided emotion and intuition out of the fear of their own animal nature. And so they've repressed it, and they've dug a big deep hole, and they shoved it in, and they block it over. And if you don't block it over enough, they're going for a state that they call pure logic, they call Kolinar. And, oh, there's a little bit peeking through, you didn't get Kolinar, go away. That's the Vulcans. Right? So they're missing half the tree, at least. I don't even know if they're using the center pillar at all. But anyway, now I want to talk a little more about the path of Resh and the path of the stars, or the sun and stars, Resh and Zadi. So remember, Yesod is that astral plane. That's where everything gets put together that we create mentally on the higher planes just before we, poof, bring it down through the path of the world into our physical creations. So the information coming from Hod into Yesod is going to be the mental process. That's where the logic comes in. That's where that laser-like mental force of that left-hand pillar, right-hand pillar, if you superimpose it, comes in. That's, boom, we're going to make it happen, The other side is the path of the stars. This is the causal plane where the ideas came from before they went over to Hode. And this is then where all these celestial wonderful ideas, this is a classic path of the dreamer. So it's the dreaming information comes into the astral, and the job of Yesod then is to integrate all that. Integrate it and create, and it's also connected, which I'm not really talking about the whole tree today. Can we go over here just a second? This path from Yesod up to Tiferet, and I know in your camera Tiferet is out of view because we're not really talking about it today. This is the path of temperance, or as Crowley calls it, and we can come back, the path of art, and it connects the heart center, Tiferet, with the sphere of Yesod, the astral plane. And that's kind of like the direct link of your heart's desire to come down into Yesod and get mixed with the mental process, the celestial intuitive process, and there's a creation, and down through your world, and there it is. Right? So, in this work, this new way of spiraling up that we're talking about with consciousness and mastering your tonal and mastering your awareness, your thinking, is to be aware of this. Be aware. What is my heart's desire? How could I create it so that this would happen? You're not just asking your logical mind, because that's down in Malkuth. You need to be asking your higher minds and your higher bodies. So when we do all these exercises to work the etheric body, to work in with the etheric body in the dreaming, so we call it the dreaming body, we call it the attention body. We place our attention over there. That's literally an extension of our etheric body that we place on that little speck of bark that's stuck to the wall over there that's now annoying me.
Should I move it?
No, it'll be there when we get done. So when you're doing all that, you're tapping into these higher sources, you're basically taking a higher level of fidelity and a higher level of control over your thought processes that you use in the world to create your world. And by thought, I don't just mean logic, I mean all of this. I mean the intuitive thinking, the logical thinking, the heart's desire, dreaming thinking, all are part of our thinking. All are part of our higher consciousness. Does that make sense? I see.
It does.
Okay.
We're just concentrating.
Okay.
We're listening.
That's good.
Deep listening.
I saw some faces that were, I guess you're thinking.
Where are you going with this? That's what that face is.
Yeah.
Okay. That's an interesting question. Where are we going? Why do you bother doing Toltec work, right? We're trying to push humanity forward. We want to master our own consciousness, so we work together in groups that we change the collective consciousness field. Okay. If you can't think your way out to the kitchen to get yourself lunch, you're not going to change the whole world for humanity. So even I, Mr. Absent-Minded Professor, have learned to feed myself. And to interrupt what I'm doing and go feed myself, because I don't like to have to stop. Now, that's a limitation of our human biological machines that I still haven't quite adjusted to. On the one hand, I like food, I like to eat it, but on the other hand, I don't like taking the time to do it. You know, when you're in an energy body and you're just absorbing everything you need from the background field of the energy, you don't have to stop and do that. Is that a question?
Yeah. Going back to Sunday's class, the ABD, is about the intention of like first like bouncing to the beloved. Isn't this a way to do it?
Mastering the tree of life is a way of doing it.
Well,
This is a step in the process.
I'm talking about like everything you said, like your heart's desire and your attention and everything. it's a way to get closer, like
Yes.
bounce higher.
Yes, but that's a fairly incomplete explanation of the process. So don't say, oh yeah, he said yes and go home and this is all I have to do.
No, I mean,
Okay.
it's part of the process.
Yeah, the beloved is much higher up the tree.
Right.
Okay, to get into position to make that contact without dying, you've got to be working above Tiferet and just below the abyss.
Well, if you bounce up to here and say it's to the roof, to the beloved, then it's easier to bounce from this up there than
Can I
at a lower level.
take a shot at this? So in one way, be careful of not combining paths. So in other words, you're speaking of the ABD work, which in one way, yeah, there's a level of consciousness that we want to be able to interact with beloved, but that's what you're training for in this lifetime. That's what you're trying to be ready for at the time of terminus, when you have the real bounce and the real chance to transition. And when we're talking about the tree of life, we're talking about building that structure in a very conscious way, and working certain paths to have a firm foundation to go up each level. So in one way, yeah, they're two paths up the same mountain, but it's hard to equate them. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, I think that was pretty reasonably well said. Thank you. So as far as why we're doing this, it's for all the reasons. We're training our consciousness. I have been talking for several years now about upgrading your consciousness, and this is the next layer I'm challenging you to start to work with. And it's just like learning a new sport. You don't go take one lesson and you're not a master. I mean, one tennis lesson will not get you into the finals at Wimbledon. Okay? Wimbledon's tennis, right? No, unless
You're really, really good.
unless you buy one of those center court tickets and you go to Wimbledon finals as a spectator.
Oh.
Okay. If you want to go there as a player and win all the prize money and curtsy to the queen, you're going to need a little more practice than one day. So that's what I'm asking you. I'm introducing this. I'm starting to encourage you to think about these higher level ways of functioning. It may seem simple, but it's powerful. What else did I want to say about that? I talked about that. I talked about that. Oh, I didn't really talk yet about the tower path. When you're climbing up the tree of life, the tower path is the last one before you move up into the middle triad with Tiferet and start working on refining that Christ consciousness in yourself. The path of Pe, or the tower, connects Hod, the mental sphere, and Nitzak, the causal sphere. Okay? So it's a little hard to understand that, but when you remember the three horizontal paths on the tree are intended to bring about balance between the extremes of the pillars. So we have your mental logical pillar, we have your female intuitive pillar, and we're trying to bridge that. And if you can imagine Spock the Vulcan being suddenly told he has to develop his emotions, there's going to be some conniption fits from his biological machine, because it's spent its whole life training to not go there, right? And if you think of any right-brained artist or a dancer or a musician suddenly being able to who can play all manner of intricate melodies of frequencies, which is all physics, and now told they have to learn math and equations to go with it, they're going to have their own version of conniption fits. So you can think a path of pay, the tower, as clearing out anything that isn't needed, including the beliefs, the limiting beliefs of the logical mind that prevent it from embracing the intuitive mind, and vice versa. So this was 15 years ago. I was working heavily on that because I was a rocket scientist, or had been. And then I became a doctor, right? A scientific natural doctor. I was still not fully on board with just being the intuitive doctor here.
Hadn't gone woo-woo yet.
Yeah, I hadn't gone woo-woo yet. But that was a story, right? I was starting to move in this direction. I had partnered with a hypnotherapist specifically for patients who were diabetic, because I recognized that there was a big component of diabetes that is addictive. You know, I couldn't even begin to tell you the number of diabetic patients I tried to help who were getting fabulous results doing, you know, the lifestyle changes I was teaching, but then they would regress because they were addicted to the lifestyle. And it's not just food, there's a whole lifestyle. I had one elderly gentleman decide he didn't want to do it anymore because he missed going over to McDonald's and Winchell's Donuts and hanging out with his buddies. And so he went back to doing that, and 3 months later he passed from kidney failure because the blood sugars went way out. So this one client I had who was starting to get some good results, and I said, okay, you really need to go work with this hypnotherapist to get these self-destructive tendencies to fall off the wagon under your control. And he came back a few weeks later and said, well, it was all right. I'll do woo, but I won't do woo-woo. And my response to him was, well, then what are you seeing me for? He said, what do you mean? You're a scientist. You did. I said, no, I'm woo-woo-woo.
3 woos.
And in the fullness of time, he drifted away too. They all did. It was that's the hardest part about working with diabetics. So anyway.
Tell them the name of your upcoming book.
No, I'm not ready for releasing that
Woo,
one.
woo, woo.
Something like that. Yeah. So that path of the tower is one you have to control. And so over the last few months, as you were both going through the tower process of being ejected from your living situations, yeah, there was some stress and
Just a little.
throwing things out physically, literally, and now you're both in wonderful new living situations, which are a definite upgrade, having visited both of your new homes. So that's the tower, and neither of you panicked. Right? It's okay to have some trepidation, but you don't get to panic. It's not allowed. Were you gonna?
I just was thinking of the analogy of like a fish in a fishbowl, and it can't grow as long as it's in a small fishbowl. And then you move it to a larger fishbowl, and it's able to grow. And
What's that fish's name? We should give it a name.
Nemo.
Smarty Yardy.
How about redfin?
It's been.
I like Smarty Yardy better.
I had a children's book called Smarty Yardy. He always went the other way.
Somebody hasn't read The Biological Machine.
Huh?
Because if you had, you'd know who Redfin is. Who's online? Let's see who's online.
With the list.
Okay. Muad'Dib.
Hi, Muad'Dib.
Dennis Brown.
Hi, Dennis Brown.
Maria Bellotti.
Hey, good to hear from you, Maria.
Vox Angeles.
Really?
Oh, wow.
Volks Angeles, I'm honored. For those who are watching and don't know who Volks Angeles is one of the very few other Akadua level 5s in existence.
Oh.
I'm honored.
And George G.
George G. Are there any invisibles?
Did I say 6 people? Including myself, I guess, that's it.
I had some email correspondence today and text messaging correspondence that a couple of our Chico Akadwa people were supposed to be online today. Maybe they'll tune in late, but I hope. And I even made sure I sent them the instructions. So we'll see. George G., good to hear from you. Okay, so that's the continuation of last week. I wanted to finish that up by talking about some of this next layer up. So mastering that part of your universe is probably enough to have on your plate right now for most of you.
Thank you for recognizing our limitations.
So some of you listening, and you know who you are already working above that level of the Tree of Life. But this little technique of constantly assessing what you're thinking of and constantly being aware of the type of thoughts and the type of material you're working with, and becoming more aware of which path on the Tree of your Life that you're on any moment by moment, and then the fine-tuning all the data that goes through there. So it's maybe one wire, but it carries a lot of different kinds of data. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say about that. Right. I kind of did my notes in a very haphazard order today. I did the end of the show first, and then I did the beginning of the show next. And I had a few other things come up in the meantime. Okay, so small segue here on how to help you do all this. I will be going into this today. We're getting close to the end of this series that I'm calling Mastering the Tonal. And we may wrap it up next week. I haven't quite decided. I will meditate with my ancestors and we'll come to that decision. But today, one more and maybe 2 more, and then we're going to be on to some other work and exploring some other things. So to do this, you all have at your disposal a secret weapon. What is it? Ding, 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 ding. Yes, the Akadua is the secret magic power of the Toltecs. The Akadua is not just a subtle energy, as you know. It is a subtle physical substance. It can be thought of as etheric matter. What is your stove doing over there?
I don't know, but it's probably not warm enough.
Ringing
I'm
the
gonna
gong.
I know.
poke at it.
Probably it's cooling down then if
Yeah.
it's burned out.
It's probably what was happening.
So the Akadua is a subtle physical substance that our particular Toltec lineage has learned to transmit quickly, as opposed to the olden days when it had to be transmitted by a slow process of resonance. And this Akadwa, you can start to learn a lot about it from its the various translations of its names. In the old days, the Toltecs simply referred to it as the power, right? And one of Coyote the Blind's gifts to the world was to recognize that the power of the Toltecs and the Akadwa of the Egyptians was the same. And considering the fact that Toltecs and Egyptians all came from Atlantis, that's understandable. So when he was tasked to release the Akadwa to the public and start getting it out to large numbers of people, which hadn't happened in 1,000 years, he chose the name Akadwa rather than the power, just because
Power was already taken.
the power is taken by dozens of other people who had ripped off Chi and turned it into a new system. Mary's wonderful power and Fred's wonderful power and Joe's wonderful power and etc. on down the line. So Akadwa, if anybody's out there using the Akadwa energy, we know it came through the lineage of our particular branch of Toltecs through Coyote the Blind. Other Toltecs in their lineages, they may have what we would call the Akadwa in some way, but as far as I know, Coyote is the one who developed and is the only one who's spreading it in this way. He was the one tasked to do that for North America. So the Akadwa, one of its translations is unity uttermost shown. This is a direct connection to the unity, that ultimate source of the universe. Another translation is innermost light. Because once we have the substance and once we're connected to that ultimate source, it emerges from within us in this light. We talk about, we don't talk about as much as we used to, but when you go to the higher planes and look, you will see a matrix of points of light. Mm-hmm. And I know some of you have seen that. And we call that matrix of light the matrix of light.
Keeping it simple.
That was funny.
And each point of light represents another holder of the Akadwa. And the brighter the light, the more they're using it, the more they're working with it, the more they're trying to spread it. And that matrix of light you can think of as a subset of the background field of energy in the universe. The quantum field, as physicists call it, the Qi field, as the ancient Chinese Neo-Confucianists called it, and I don't know what the name was for the equivalent structure in the Ayurvedic Hindu traditions of prana. I'm sure they had one. Mm-hmm. They had names for darn near everything else in the universe. I doubt they missed that one. I just don't know it. I'm not...
Coyote would know.
Yeah, he probably would. So this Akadwa, you can think of it as a consciousness amplifier. So it's like all the other subtle energies I've ever been exposed to on steroids. Right? we're the pumped up version. Or they're on the 10 volt amplifier and we're on the 120 volt amplifier. Because it has this ultimate potential, because we're not just tuning your physical body to be as susceptible as it can to the Qi energy, which pretty much all the others are using in some ways, is Qi. I call it chi. Japanese traditions call it ki, like Reiki. In India, it was called prana. In ancient Greece, the system of medicine known as Greek medicine, they called it the vital force. So that was kind of the translation of the concept of chi and prana into the ancient Greek language. Because there was trading going on between India and the Mediterranean as well as China and the Mediterranean for eons. No matter what the historians may want to say. And so this energy, this chi, this prana, whatever, that's nice. You can do a lot of cool things with chi. But then when you plug it into the Akadua, it's like, wow. I've been doing chi between my healing work and acupuncture work and martial arts work for on the order of, let's say, 12 years. I think some of them may have started a little earlier than that. About 12 years before I found the Akadua. And my abilities with the energies then went through the roof after I got the Akadua. I honestly can sit here and swear on a stack of sacred scriptures from all over the world that within a month of getting the Akadua, my abilities were 10 times higher. And that was 4 Akadua levels ago and at least 4 orders of magnitude ago. So this is the real thing. And my observation is most Akadua holders, and I put myself in this category, most of us don't use it enough. As much as I use it every day, we don't use it enough. We all remember the Akadua oath, right? Mm-hmm. That we wish to use the Akadua for the benefit of all beings everywhere. And when we ask people what that means, which we do in our in the Akadua classes we teach, oh, I won't use it for harm. Oh, I'll only use it to help. But the most important aspect of that is use the Akadua. Use it. So for this new thought process, I'm asking you to embrace. Use the Akadua on it. Get up in the morning, turn on your Akadua as you set the intent to be continually aware of your thoughts. What am I thinking and why am I thinking it? And compare that to your intents for the day, right? Last week I showed you my checklist. I don't have it here right now. For the day, how much did I get done? What was still left? That comes out of your intent. And then that's where you should be placing your attention. And what goes on your list is should be the things that serve your true will. Well, wait, how do I know what my true will is? Nobody told me yet, and nobody will. Except you and your holy guardian angel, and if you talk your daemon into it, your daemon can tell you. And if you successfully make contact with your own essential self, which you can do, your essential self might tell you the next piece of your true will. But none of those higher plane sources, be it you or your angel, are going to tell you more than you're ready for. And some of it gets held back because as soon as you know, you might inadvertently blurt it out, and then the adversary knows. Oh, shoot, she was going to do what? Well, he'll just stop that right now. So you're only given 1 or 2 steps ahead. And then when you're really good, you might get 3. There's some things, I've gotten 3 steps. Okay, you're going to do this, 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 and okay. Well, then what? And it's like, no, we're not telling you. They will not tell you. It will be withheld until you need that information. And they'll tell you all these weird things like, oh, you're going to go off and you're going to learn rocket science. I wanted to be an astronomer. Yeah, that's nice, but you need to go learn rocket science. Okay, that rocket science thing, you did that really well. Now it's time to go be a naturopathic physician. Huh? Okay. I didn't even know what a naturopathic physician was until I was driving down the road one day, and a voice in my head says, naturopathic medicine. I've heard that voice before, a few other things.
But you didn't know what naturopath.
I didn't know. I had to, and this was before internet. This was so long ago. This was in the BI era, before internet. I had to go to, no,
A library.
everybody said, oh, I didn't warn them. Some of them probably fell over in shock. There's a place called a library.
And did you pull out the wooden index
No,
drawer
no, no, no.
and go through like that?
There wasn't anything in the index of this particular library. So then I'm starting to think, well, So used to be a document called Peterson's Guide to Higher Education. Remember Peterson's Guide?
I never went there.
Okay. It's a big fat volume about this thick that was divided into categories and listed every graduate degree program from an accredited university in the U.S. And then I think there was another one for foreign stuff. And I'm flipping through that, and it's like, naturopathic medicine. There is. So then I had to go find it. Doing that really well, and along the way I picked up Oriental medicine because, acupuncture and meridians and energy and circuits. I'm an electrical engineer. And you're telling me there's circuits in the body? Well, I got to learn that too, right? And I did. And then the universe says, no. That was nice. You did that really well. You got a bunch of laws passed that are helpful to the public. And now you're going to go be a shaman.
What?
Say what? Yeah, a shaman. Let me spell it for you. I know how to spell it. What the heck do you want me to do that for? I'm a scientific healer. No, you're going to be a shaman.
And you're probably going, oh my God!
Yeah. That's why if they had told me 20 years earlier that I was going to do that, I would have said, up yours very much, and I'm out of here, right? But that's the kind of thing that happens. Oh, you're gonna move 700 miles. Say what? Oh, that was after I moved 3,000 miles from Washington to Florida, and then 2,500 miles from Florida to California. Now we're going up here to Jefferson. So I moved across state lines again to get here. So a lot of state lines I've moved over.
Kind of did a triangle, didn't you?
Yeah, kind of. And I also visited Maine once. So I've been to all the corners of the continent, and I've been to Hawaii and that big one, Alaska. And I've never been.
Did you see Russia?
No, you can only do that if you go to Nome, and I was in southern
Sarah
Alaska.
Palin's backyard.
Yeah.
How do they? I mean, I warned you guys, right? We're into the 9-month gestation period of total pure chaos on politics. And
The shit's hitting the fan. You're right.
yeah. So I miss the good old days when people like Sarah Palin were easy to make fun of, and then they certified the purpose because they made all the other candidates look good, right? I mean, now we're in an era where
Nobody was
Sarah
on.
Palin, if she were running, she would be the same one. When you look at this menagerie of carnival sideshow rejects that the Democrats are trotting up there, and if you look at the clowns, all one of them that the Republican Party is trotting up there, and you go, WTF? What do we have to do to get real candidates? That's what I posted on that today. It's like, is there any office anywhere that has real candidates? I don't think so. I haven't seen it.
Which one are you running for?
I don't run. Like I said, we had that conversation, right? Last week. It was the diplomat, i.e. politician, who says the opposite of what they mean, or the lady who says the opposite of what she means, or the general who says what he means and he means what he says, and that's me. I'm the warrior. If I say you have one head too many, then I mean you have one head too many, and I'm about to take it off.
That's why they call a liver the general.
Yeah. So, I am not electable. In order to be a politician, you have to A, be electable, and B, if you're competent, that's even better. But most importantly, you have to be electable, and I am absolutely positively not electable. Because politics, the way it's being run in the system now, is all about compromise. I don't compromise. I'm a physicist. You know, I don't negotiate how much fuel you're going to give me to launch my rocket to get my satellite into orbit. You know, this when I was working with the Taiwanese government back 20 years ago, or 25 years ago, and we were negotiating, they wanted to negotiate everything like it was a business deal. It's like, you don't understand. You know, I had to draw on the board a picture of the Earth and rockets and this energy change is this much. You need this much velocity. If you don't, it falls back and burns up and goes splat. And that's the laws of physics.
And splat
Oh,
is
I can
not
see
pretty.
the interpreter.
I know.
Oh.
How do you interpret
Go
splat?
Ooh.
You know, other than their heavy reliance on face-saving negotiations which was based on Confucianism, I really liked the Taiwanese people. I loved a lot of them. They were great. I loved visiting Taiwan, which I got to do. And I remember being on a train riding from point A to point B. And I was there with my boss, and there was these other people there who were Taiwanese who spoke like this much English, which is about 10 times more than the this much Chinese I knew. And so I had to resort to drawing pictures.
Hey, it worked.
And it worked, right? But no, that wasn't the time. Every issue imaginable about being a rocket scientist and building satellites and launching rockets that you can imagine, it's purely technical, it's driven by physics, they wanted to negotiate every one of them.
That's the problem.
So anyway, when you start paying attention to your guidance system, and I was a guidance system specialist, I specialized in the guidance and control systems and the rocket propulsion systems of unmanned spacecraft. Just so you know.
And you're still an expert in guidance systems.
Different type of good
But now he's
hard.
trying-
These are a lot harder to program. Let me tell you, these biological machines we're running around.
Unmanned spacecraft, right?
Yeah,
Earthcraft.
building a spaceship to fly to Mars would be so much easier than herding cats in a shamanic school.
Where'd
Way
they need to
easier.
go?
Way easier.
Meow.
Just bring some catnip next time. Boy, if they tuned in just at that moment, you would scare them.
Right.
That's true.
If that little bit would scare somebody away, they got no business being here. So anyway, you've got these paths on the Tree of Life. You've got guidance. You're trying to establish reliable connections to your holy guardian angel. Just trying to pull this back together. And you have to train your consciousness. You have to know the difference between the sound of your ego mind, which is the mind of the machine, the sound of you, the sound of your daemon, the sound of your angel, and the sound of your essence. Okay? There's probably more you have to distinguish, but start with those 5. And the challenge is, when you first start this work, is they all sound the same. They sound the same, but their style and personality are subtly different. And that's your clues. So when you go to meditate, when you go to do anything else, you get up in the morning, you've got your intents that you meditated on, you're placing your attention on those intents, activate your akadwa with the intent, and then with the intent that every however often throughout the day, you will keep asking yourself, what am I thinking about? Oh, this problem is an intuitive problem. This is a causal plane to Yesod issue, let me send all my Akado to my intuitive mind so I can get what I need. Oh, this one's a logical issue. This is physics. This is engineering. This is measurements. I gotta know where to drill a hole, so I put the wire in the right place and I miss the pipe that's right next to it, right? I gotta measure. That's a judgment issue. That's Hod over there to Malkuth. So it's the Akadua that amplifies all of that awareness and all of that ability to discern those things. And you can use the Akadua for everything. When I'm doing my carpentry, I use the Akadua. When I'm chopping firewood, I use the Akadua. When I'm, those rare times nowadays when I practice my music, I use the Akadua. If I could sing, I would use the Akadua.
Maybe if you use the Akado, you can sing.
Oh, she's so cute. Thank you.
Right.
Oh, good one. Ding!
Well, the physics of my vocal cords and those subtle microscopic changes in the lining of your airways, your sinus path, all of those go into making up whether someone has a good singing voice or not. I'm in the category of or not. And I'm okay with that. I am okay with that. Because I can play keyboard some, I can play bagpipe some, and who knows, maybe I'll pick up another instrument here one of these days.
Nice.
So, use the Akadwa for all of that. To do the higher work, you really have to start making those contacts with the higher planes. The first one will probably be your inner teacher or your inner guide. Eventually you can make contact with your essential self. Along the way you'll probably make contact with a structure called your higher self, which looks different than my inner guide, and it's very different than my holy guardian angel. Not every system of spirituality talks about every one of these. So if you're in a system that doesn't talk about it, that's okay. I've pieced together over the years kind of a roadmap of all these aspects of ourselves that we need to connect with and master. Even when we do, some of you, all of you here in the room were at the level 4 intensive last year. Some of you online were not. But I taught an exercise called that your inner guide, right? And where you basically make contact serially with all the different archetypes corresponding to the tarot archetypes, the tree of life archetypes, because that's all inside us. And you want to be in charge of your avatar, not the other way around. They've got these self-driving cars now, right?
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden it'll start doing this on its own, and you're in there, I'm never going to own one. Never going to own one. Because you need to be in control of your vehicle.
Did you see the self-driving car that ran over the robot?
That sounds way too much like the beginning of the Terminator.
Oh, really?
Movie franchise. Warring robots and humans are collateral damage. So when you're driving around in your car, you are not your car, right? It's a vehicle. You get in, you control it, and it does something. Kind of the next step to that whole concept would be a lot of the kids' movies, I guess they're now adult movies too, about the Transformer robots, right?
Mm-hmm.
They look like a truck and then it just boom, 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 and now it's this big robot with cannons on its fingers and all these things, right? But inside, there's still a human controlling it. And so the human gets in to the cab and it doesn't just sit in and put on a seatbelt, right? It gets in and it puts on gloves and a helmet and all these things so that it's in there moving, so if it kicks its legs in a robot-to-robot karate battle, then the leg of the robot moves. And it's all these things, right? And it's all wired up from this basically getting in a suit to make the robot do what a robot is supposed to do. That's actually really similar to the concept of us as an eternal essence getting in and putting on this human biological machine and driving it around. And when the biological machine wears out and goes kaput, then the essence is pulled out and it's like stuff happens, and then either you stay in the energetic state or you come back into a new incarnation. And most of us, for different reasons, do the new incarnation thing until we're finally done what we've agreed to do and say, okay, I'm taking a break. I'm going to be
Rock.
well, not a rock. I'm just going
What's
to
wrong with
be
rocks?
an ascended master. I love crystals. See, I've got crystals here on the altar.
Lovely
And when
ones.
you say rocks, I think of the exercise.
I knew
No,
you
no
thought
more
of.
rocks for me.
So that's the kind of awareness of all our aspects. We've got this series of light bodies that connect us to the higher planes, and somewhere out there in the higher planes your essence is hanging out and is endeavoring to not just one. Now imagine you're in your transformer, right? You're all wired up. Now put the transformer inside another transformer, and that one inside another. So there's this whole range,
It's like the Russian dolls.
like the Russian
Oh,
dolls,
yeah.
which I think they get the idea from the series of light bodies. And that's what the essence is trying to do. But each step down in frequency, you know, there's fewer inputs available for the essence to use. Because we're down here living in a 4-dimensional world, and the essence is up there in a 19-dimensional world. And somehow you've got to hook that 19-pin connector into a 4-pin socket.
Radio
And
Shack.
that doesn't want to work.
So that's where evolution comes in, people. We're evolving our physical machines to grow more sockets, and we're evolving this series of light bodies so that all the functions the essence wants to use can, you know, well, if I connect this and put a filter and I put a processing buffer in here, then they can go in there, and then down here at the other end we'll create a neural pathway that de-integrates those signals, and then we can kind of make it work. It's sort of like you're in an old house and you want to get your internet signal from one end to the other. Well, if you had phone lines, you could just plug it into the phone line. But these old houses like ours, they don't have phone lines wired in anywhere, right? So there's actually filters you can put on your power sockets, and then everywhere that copper is connected to, you know, on the fourth floor over there, we only have two, the fourth floor over there, you put another demixer in, you mix it at one end, you unmix it at the other, and you know it's signal multiplexing from the engineering terms, and you filter it out, and you got your internet running over the power cables. So that's what we're trying to do with our light bodies. And if we turn on our conduit every day with these intents to evolve, it's not just evolution. Physical evolution is not just an eons of time thing. You in your current physical body can evolve your physical body to a certain extent right now in this lifetime. The biggest thing you need to do is you need to make neural pathways. How do you make neural pathways? Who knows that?
You learn something new.
Ding, ding, ding.
She's a
You remembered the last time I said that. You learn new stuff. You push yourself beyond your comfort zone. Physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And you turn on the Akadua. And you do exercises to really amplify your use and connection with your light body. So we generally start with the etheric because it's the next one up from the physical body. When you start seeing auras, that's usually the first thing you see is this little glow. It's an inch or two bigger than your physical body. Especially in dark rooms, it's too bright in here to really see it. Well, you've got a shadow behind you. I can just see the little bit of it. So yeah, you have to push yourself, and the more you use the Akadua on everything, and you continually push yourself, you create those neural pathways, and every time you've got a new you're adding hardware. Every new neural pathway is you just upgraded to add hardware, and now it makes possible better connections with the etheric and the astral and the causal and the mental and all those other bodies up there in frequency. Right? So when you're driving around in your fancy new human biological machine, it's sort of like you're driving around your transformer or your car, and you don't want the transformer or your fancy car thinking for itself under most conditions. Those instant reflexes we've talked about, yeah, you want that. You want the car to stay on the road even if you fall asleep, so you let your machine drive until you wake up.
I think my autopilot's broken.
Well,
You turn on your verb pilot.
I gotta lift my foot consciously. And
yeah.
Exactly. What's up with that, huh?
So, yeah, this is the kind of thing you have to start to be aware of. Is when is it okay, like to save your life, that you let the mind of the machine take charge? In fact, there's a lot that we do in martial arts where we train the machine under certain circumstances to do certain things automatically because we don't want to slow down our response time by having to think about it. We deliberately, in martial arts, one of the many things we do towards that end is we retrain our flinch response. If I had a soft object, I'd throw at everybody right now. And the flinch response of about 98% of people is exactly the same if you haven't trained yourself. I take some large object and I throw it at your head, your response is this. One of the martial arts instructors that I follow has a picture on his website in an article, one of his newsletters, I guess it is. And it's taken at a baseball game of the crowd. And I think there may be a couple players down here. And when the guy's swinging the bat at the ball and he misses, right? And sometimes the bat slips out of his hand.
Mm-hmm.
And it goes flying towards the crowd. And there's about a dozen people in the crowd. You only got like that long, right? Because it comes flying at you.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a dozen people right where that bat is headed. Because you see the guy's arms going like that, and you can see it slipped out. And all 12 people or so are doing this. Instant flinch response. So in the Japanese and Okinawan karate I study and teach, there's several what are known as a series of pre-coordinated moves that we train with called a kata in the Japanese language. And there's 2 or 3 of them that start out with some variation of this. Some of the instructors in some of the schools that have lost their connection to the ancient sources are teaching all kinds of gibberish about what does this mean.
Looks like a mudra almost.
Yeah, it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And you get some very creative explanations, which when you're learning a combat art, you need a combat-related explanation. Something is coming at your head, be it a punch or a kick.
It's protection.
Then what do you do next? And that's where the form goes in and breaks a neck, fun stuff like that. But it's that instant reflex. So we do that in martial arts. We want our machine to not have to send a signal up to your brain, hope you're paying attention, and wait for something to come back, because by that time the baseball bat just hit you in the face and spoiled your whole day probably.
Mm-hmm.
You're out cold.
I saw one recently, I think it was a ball, not a bat. And it was going right for the head of a little kid who was totally oblivious, sitting there eating his ice cream or whatever. And, you know, the 12 people in the frame, most of them were ducking or looking out for themselves. And there was 2 guys, you see their arms reaching in front of the kid's face to catch the ball. Yeah. And those were the 2 that, you know, had the reflexes.
They were awake.
I mean, the others had the reflexes to protect themselves, but, you know.
That's actually a higher level response than just
Right. It's
flinch.
They're probably karate.
They could be.
Yeah.
You never know.
and the kid was completely oblivious to the whole thing.
Well, they tell you on your
But they
ticket,
gave us
if
the
you read the
ball.
fine print, it says like, don't take your eye off the ball, right?
Right.
Because, you know, and you by buying the ticket, you're basically buying an insurance waiver that says if you get hit, then
It's your own problem.
it's your own problem. But they go to great lengths. Now they've got the nets up, so hopefully if you're in a distance where a foul ball or a thrown bat could accidentally hit you, they've got a net up pretty much in most of the parks.
Yeah.
Just because why cause pain and anguish if you don't have to? So the concept that you're trying to rewire yourself and you're trying to increase the number of connections to your higher bodies and to your essence is all tied to the long-term purpose of humanity, which is bringing the force of God down here into the physical world. The physical world is not necessarily something you're trying to escape from, unless you're a member of certain religious cults who, you know, are waiting for the mothership over San Diego, so everybody put on your Nike sneakers and drink your grape Kool-Aid, and we're going to beam ourselves up, whether the mothership wants us or not.
I don't like Kool-Aid.
Yeah. I especially advise against grape Kool-Aid.
Ah,
Mm.
But that's what
Is
you're
that
trying
what
to
Jim
do.
Jones used?
Say again?
Is that what Jim Jones used?
That's what Jim Jones used, was grape Kool-Aid laced with cyanide.
I remember the cyanide.
Yeah. So that's where that Kool-Aid joke comes from. I know, and it's not really a joke. It's not funny
No.
because about 200 and 300 and some people died. But the guy was a murderer. And so he said, I'm going to take a whole bunch more people with me. I would not want to even know where in the macro dimensions he is and what he's being required to suffer through right now. Because that's some heavy duty karma.
Very heavy.
Mhm.
That's some heavy duty karma. So we're rewiring ourselves. We're rewiring and making our bodies of light more functional. I suggest starting with your etheric and then going to the astral. And astral, of course, where the fun stuff is, because then you get to fly. And everybody thinks that's really cool.
Might see Arya
But
flying around there.
But don't fall for the trap of saying, oh, this is cool, I'm done. I did something cool. That's just a step on the way, right? Until you're a fully integrated God in the physical world, you're not done. Is that a question?
I was just gonna say that, you mentioned auras earlier, but again, the caution that just because you can see things, hear things, know things, that's not the end. Those are simply tools and skills that we develop in order to navigate through this lifetime. But,
Exactly. That's right. So the fact that I can look around and squint and see certain aspects of auras is like interesting. It's useful in martial arts if somebody's trying to kill you. It's kind of sad and scary sometimes when you see someone walking around that you know with the death aura over them. First time that happened to me, I didn't know what it was. But you can see that. You in your work, you may see it.
Yeah, and my Aboriginal teacher, she says that they call it colors, they don't call it auras.
Mhm.
She says she knows 7 years before the doctors know that somebody has cancer because it's already in your colors.
Yeah. I could believe that. Yeah. I mean, when you look at the rate, this is totally off topic, but the rate of cell division of cancerous tumor, by the time it's big enough to be detectable by any imaging, yeah, it's been around, I think what they taught us was 5 years. So that's why we have a built-in part of our immune system whose only job is to kill cancer cells. Because everybody develops cancer off and on, and then the immune system takes it out. If you haven't suppressed your immune system with modern life on planet Earth. So, questions?
I have one for you.
Oh, you have a question?
Right. She wrote one down Sunday.
Oh, that's right.
My question would be, this goes along the lines of what you're talking about tonight. How would I consciously, intentionally invite clear light exposure? And how do I die while alive for conscious exposure to the beloved void, to clear light, expose the higher radiations intentionally? How do I do that?
So you're basically saying you want to expose yourself to radiations intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
It's training for eventual terminus and as connections and working the macro dimensions, etc.
Right.
Okay. So
Is how do you bounce?
um,
Doing.
the first step of this process would be your intent. You have to hold an intent that that's what you want to do. And it has to be a real work intent, not just a, ooh, that would be cool intent. So like we were just saying, ooh, I'm going to see auras and then I'm going to make a career out of seeing auras. It's like, okay, why? So you need to have an intent and some version of assisting your transformation and your own transcendence and your ability to assist humanity collectively and to do your true will. That should always be your intent. And if you feel called, well, I need to start experiencing this now, okay, you have that intent. Some of the skills, actually a lot of the skills we learned in the level 4. I will be doing a refresher next Saturday. It's coming Saturday. 6 days away, right? Oh, 5 days away? 5 days away. We have that one-day class, the diaphanous shell redux, where we're going to go over all those exercises again. So that will be part of what you need to do. Eventually, once you master those and you use those regularly, you're going to learn how to open portals. That was not taught in the level 4. But when you can open a portal, you will be able to start experiencing those radiations. You need to be able to place yourself, your consciousness, your awareness on the tree of life at the level of Tiferet looking up. And the clear light passage describes a lot of that, right? Don't have my glasses here. Now, not later, not in the past, but now, I am experiencing the clear light of objective reality. Nothing is happening. Nothing ever has happened or ever will happen. So you're going to start experiencing that when you sense the clear light and you sense a total awareness that there's nothing happening. You may experience this state as you're feeling the radiations, you're seeing a clear light even with your eyes closed, and you're aware that you're aware, but you have no awareness of who you are, what you are, or where you are. All you're aware of is a conscious awareness.
So that's what the Hindus call a neti neti.
I don't know what the Hindus call neti neti.
It's where everything is and where everything's not.
Well, I don't know enough about that to be able to equate that to this, okay? My present sense of self, the Voyager, is in reality the void itself, having no qualities or characteristics. So this passage, reading number 4, is a description of the state that you can attain, that you will be in, and that's when you're starting to experience these radiations. So you have to be able to be in that state and be comfortable without any frame of reference, and then not panic. And the first time you start to experience that, it will probably be spontaneous.
We're also experiencing it every time we consciously expose ourselves to our teachers, the radiations coming through them.
Mm-hmm.
By engaging in the work and pushing ourselves kind of beyond that limit,
Mm-hmm.
we start to sense that it's like when you're in the zone.
Yeah.
And if you're an athlete or an artist or whatever, you get in that. The Greeks called it Kairos time, where it's an artist time, which is like timeless. You're in that space and you're going to create till you're done creating, and then you're done. But you're not going to stop before that. You're not going to just draw for an hour. That's so. I find sometimes, like when my ears change, sometimes there'll be little triggers, that I'm like checking in with my holy guardian angel as to, okay, what's going on? What do I need to know about this moment? And it's kind of like a download. It's kind of like that energy coming in, and it's taking the time to be present with it and hold that space and not worry about where it's going or what the lesson is, or to just be present with that.
Yeah. So a lot of this has to do with your receptivity and your practice and experience. So the more you do these higher level exercises, the better you are. So like your physical vehicle, I've talked about this a lot, it's in my book, which I hope someday you all read, the Heal Your Life book. You need to get your physical vehicle functioning optimally. That allows your etheric vehicle to function optimally. So you can't play a symphony if all your musical instruments are full of dust and cobwebs and bat nests. Do bats make nests?
I think so.
Okay. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I don't remember. I haven't been that intimately involved with bats. Only the couple that flew around our house at different times, inside here.
They have a nest up there?
They have
they
bat
were-
houses, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like a
I know
bird
they have
house.
Yeah, okay.
caves.
Right?
Yeah. So anyway, you need to put yourself into those situations. Doing the vitriol regularly.
Yeah.
When was the last time you did the vitriol?
It's been a long
It's been a
time.
while.
It should be at least once a week.
The
Okay.
basic one.
The basic one anyway, and the full one at least once a month.
That's a perfect. I always think of that as being like, okay, you don't always know how or where to expose yourself to the energy if your shaman's not available or whatever. But the vitriol is your own ability to expose yourself to the energies.
Mhm.
So if you don't do it, then you're not. That's your self mechanism of exposing yourself to it.
We're coming up on 10 years. It'll be 10 years in June when we were first taught the vitriol by Coyote. And in the notes from that class, which I still have, it tells us exactly what will happen physically. That will precipitate what we call the reverberations, all these physical sensations as your body starts to align and adjust with something higher. And the caution was blatantly given, it will be very uncomfortable. So for a long time, there weren't many of Coyote's students actually doing it. We did it faithfully and rigorously, and we precipitated all that.
Mhm.
Learning the vitriol was actually what precipitated my spontaneous transition into level 4. And I know that Vox Angeles is on the line, and she transitioned to her level 4 about the same time I did. And I don't know if she was doing the vitriol.
But she does so much voice work that she's
Yeah.
probably doing similar type of things.
So if you want, that's the first thing you can and should be doing. And I can't recommend to those of you who are official students in this lineage enough that you need to be doing the vitriol regularly. If you want to accelerate your progress, do that.
So are radiations actually the clear light?
Part of it, yeah, the radiations
Shocking radiation.
are a subset, I would say, of the clear light. So as you're reading in the ABD, since you're going through the class, and you go through each chamber and it tells you there's this color of radiation that does this, and there's that color of radiation that does that. That's all part of the clear light. So that's what we're doing. We're exposing ourselves, because keep in mind, we have our assemblage point, which is a filter and a lens and a holographic projector, and it keeps out the vast majority of the universe from our reality, in quotes. Because this is just a tiny bit. If we didn't have our filters on, we would see and be experiencing chaos. So that chaos of the background field of the universe can be thought of as the clear light as well.
So, the radiations, is that accessing also to, what, the koans or the rays from the higher masters? Like, supposedly, Saint Germain is the violet ray, for example, and,
only from the sense that anything here in the tonal, including the violet ray and ascended masters, or the Hindu gurus on the mountain, or the crazy El Salvadorian shamans down in Riverside, that all of that's part of the tonal, and the tonal is a subset of the background field of the universe. Does that make sense?
mhm.
Okay. Yeah.
You're speaking of the radiations in terms of access to something. That's what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of yourself going out in the noonday sun and getting bombarded by solar rays. That's not necessarily access to something. You're not trying to access the sun through this bombardment of solar rays. What we're trying to do in the ABD work is prepare ourselves for disembodiment when we're in this suspended state in the macro dimensions and we're being bombarded by all of these different radiations.
So yeah, you're going to lose the benefit of the safety of your assemblage point filter. Right? So now all of a sudden you're out there in the chaos. Don't freak out. It's the training that the ABD is trying to give us.
And so part of the way that we expose ourselves consciously to those radiations is to be in the presence of a guru who is a channel, is an invocant for the higher level energies.
Mm-hmm.
To, consciously engage in the work.
And shift our assemblage point.
Yeah, in doing all of that, we're shifting it, So I think it's the engagement with the work, which is that pushing ourselves a little bit, in a lot of different directions, learning something new, creating those neural pathways, all of that's allowing us to access higher levels of radiation.
Yeah, it's very much the equivalent of the concept from the allegory of the cave. If you recall the allegory of the cave, it's standing up and turning around and looking at the firelight, which is brighter than anything you've seen here before that point, and then walking out of the cave out into the bright light of day. It's not so much like we have to go access and turn them on. The radiations are there all the time. The sunlight is there, even when the planet is turned away from it. Like right now, we're in the shadow of the Earth. Right now, we call it nighttime, from a very Earth-centric point of view. But the sun is out there, radiating more or less equally in all directions constantly. You can take advantage of that or not. Right?
So here's a trivia question, based off of some of the stuff that we've been taught. How can you access or pay homage to the sun at night?
Do salutations.
Exactly. You should be doing the salutations.
And so, even though if you're not awake at midnight, before you go to bed, you consciously connect with the sun, use the Akadiwa, use solar, and, feel and sense where that sun is, even though you can't see it
Mm-hmm.
or feel it directly.
So a lot of your questions are good, and a lot of the answers are basically do the exercises we've been taught. So everything I've taught you, that Ori's taught you, then do that. Do the vitriol. with great regularity, and when the reverberations happen, and they will, especially when you invoke an upturn, then you learn to enjoy it. And don't freak out.
It's the E-ride.
The e-ticket. Boy, are you dating yourself by even knowing what an e-ticket
Right.
is.
So when we do the bigger vitriol, the once a month, should we do it like on a new moon or a full moon, or is there any energies that will help us to assimilate it better?
That's an interesting question. The whole Akadua thing is a solar energy. One of the subfrequencies, of course, is lunar. I have to say I've never worried about what phase the moon is in when I do the vitriol. If I'm doing it every week, we tend to do the full one a lot more often than the less full one. We actually did the less full, just the basic one today, to start moving through some of this energy that's being kicked up by retrogrades and my Saturday class next weekend, as well as Coyotes Intensive at the end of next month, which has already started, for those of you who have committed
And
to
yours has already started.
it. Oh yeah. Quick.
I think it's a good question, Patricia, but yeah, everything you do can be helped or hindered by looking at all of the other influences that could be influencing it. And so if you just limit yourself to becoming really conscious of times of the day, times of the month, times of the year, you know.
So for,
and go ahead.
I was just gonna say, you finish your thought because I'm
So,
gonna
you know,
segue.
there's obviously, if it's in the second half of the year, you've got waning solar energies, but each month you're going to have a build of the lunar energies that you can work with. My personal experience and belief, based off of doing this for 10 years, is that I don't do the full Monty the week before a full moon.
I haven't heard that term in a long
Because the full moon is already this building energy. It can be very chaotic. I don't go out of the house on a full moon unless I have to, and if I do, I'm going to go with my shields up. And so there's already a lot of other stuff going on. And so I usually would prefer, I do like a cleanse release after the full moon. And so maybe a week or so after that is when I'm looking to shift to start building energies for the next full moon. And so that low point there is kind of maybe a better option. But that's just me personally, and it's based off of my own observations. So, you know, obviously there's a lot, like for example, you might have heard us joke about Dan. Dan was a wolfer here, and he wanted to have his level 2 in the back of Pluto's cave. So picking a different place for doing like a transmission attunement is going to really change the situation. Well, who was it recently that was doing the vitriol in Pluto's cave?
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
so, alright, well you better be ready for the reverberations from that one.
Uh-huh.
You know, and even, let's say you're hell-bent on doing that, you might choose the time of day or the time of month or the time of year to augment that.
So for anybody online who is either live and doesn't know what the vitriol is, or is watching this after the fact, the vitriol is an advanced technique that's taught at a Kadua level 3 or above that cleans out all your energy structures, your chakras and your central tube, or the reed as we call it, and keeping that clear helps all the connections with the higher light bodies. So that's the short version. Any other questions?
Now, what does the Kundalini do with all that, the vitriol?
Well, the Kundalini is this intense latent energy. That's your biggest source of energy in your body. And in order for it to flow and harness that as power, you want all your energy structures clear and functional. So you could make a case that some of the symptoms of the verbs is actually side effects of Kundalini more freely moving. Does that answer your question?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And if you're going to be consciously working with Kundalini, you want to be doing exercises and particularly balancing the chakras, which the first half of the vitriol does. And so just, so anything that you want to do where it's going to be enhanced by the movement of energy through the body, cardio class, whatever, you're going to be better off doing at least the shortened version, because you're aligning all your chakras and these energy bodies. And if you think about the toning in each of those areas, it's kind of like an internal ultrasound. There's a vibrational frequency, and if you're focusing on the different chakras when you apply those tones, you're physically vibrating.
It's
them.
like a didgeridoo yourself.
Yeah.
Doing the didge to yourself.
Yeah,
Basically.
with the central
Yeah.
reed.
From the inside out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot you can do, and so go home tomorrow and do the vitriol, or tonight
Mm-hmm.
do the vitriol.
Yeah, we could do it in our homes. Nobody's there.
Right?
Exactly. My kitties will do it with me.
Yeah,
When we
Nice.
had our dog Spirit, he was
I
alive.
love Spirit.
Yeah, me too. And well, he was an old dog, and he did not like the vitriol.
Well, I don't know if he didn't like it or if he was trying to do it too. If he was, because he'd also start howling.
He would be like, let's say we were in the bedroom, and that's where we were doing it, and then we had the door closed, and doing the vitriol, just to be clear. That's not the only thing we had to do in the bedroom, but for the cases of the story, we were doing the vitriol. And
Sure, right.
the door was closed, and then Spirit, of course, he's a 110, 115 pound white German Shepherd dog.
Big teddy bear.
Big, giant paws go clump, 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 clump. He'd flop down on the floor right outside the bedroom, and then when we would start toning with the vitriol, he'd start howling.
I think you're right. He was joining you.
Right, I think so.
So, anyway, that's the vitriol. Anyway, so that, I think, answers your question at least enough for today. Because we've got enough to work with, I think. Any other questions online? Any comments worth repeating from online? And if they're not worth repeating,
When
don't.
we were talking about herding cats, Mohadib says herding cats and one mouse.
And one mouse.
And
Yep, the jumping kind of.
she's doing really good though. She says she did the homework and just came back from a therapy session with her channeler friend where she worked through a lot of I guess what we were talking about at the beginning of class. And she says again that this all plays right into conversations she just had in her sessions with Bobby G, and that she knows what to do. So, all right, do it. And then she went on to say that one of her students is interested in doing the level 4, and that she's going to be giving them the level 3 after we get together for the refresher.
Okay,
Nice.
all right.
Yeah.
That's good to know. Thank you. No other comments or inputs from like George? Come on, George, you got to say something someday.
He says, hey.
That sounds like George.
The
That's
fact that he
George.
lets us know he's here is good. Right?
Hey,
We miss you, George.
yeah, come on back. I've got some help. I got several things you could help me with actually. But,
We miss George.
yeah.
Good guy.
All right. No other comments. No other questions. I guess we're gonna stop.
Okay. Going once, going twice.
Do good. Avoid evil.